Hi there, my name is Dr. Kapoor, and this is Public Speaking 101. This is the book that we'll be using for our class. You should have gotten yours from your Da Vinci coach. And if you haven't, please reach out to her. Okay. So today, what I want to do is talk about chapters 1 and 2. And so let's kind of get started. I would strongly recommend that you take notes. Take breaks as you go. Stop the video at intervals. Make sure all your notes are ready to go. You will need to refer to these notes, especially during your quiz, right? And most of our quizzes are open book, not all of them, but most of them are. So if you have notes, and if you watch this video, you may not have to watch it again. You'd be ready to go. Okay, so let's get started. And what I'd like to do here is to hit this play button. So you're going to stop seeing me, but you're going to see the presentation and you're going to hear my voice. Okay, off we go. All right, welcome to Public Speaking 101. The first question we want to ask ourselves is, why study public speaking, right? You've probably taken a class like this in high school. And so you're thinking, well, I've done enough of presentations. Why do I really need to study this? Well, the answer is that in this particular UCLA class, you're going to learn how to create outlines. You're going to learn how to build an argument. You're going to learn how to bring in ethos and pathos and logos. I'm not going to talk about all of this stuff, but bringing in emotion and logic into your arguments, into your conversations is important. You're going to learn how to do that. Okay, so public speaking isn't for this class, it isn't about just standing in front of people or just presenting something, right? It is about structuring your speech. It's about creating an outline, and it's about finding a very logical, coherent way of writing, and then that would reflect in the way you would deliver your speech as well. So this is the reason you have to take this class, why it is almost a prerequisite for most of the other classes that you may need to take if you want to study communication, but it is really the 101. Okay, so one thing to remember is it's really important to study public speaking when it comes to building your career, right? You need to create logical arguments. You need to present in front of people. You need to present information that is accurate and relevant. And so all of these skills you can develop as we practice our speech writing and speech delivery in this class. Okay. All right. So, of course, it's important for a job because, especially if you have like a sales job or a communication-based job, you really do need to learn to communicate well. Employers tend to look for folks who are able to share their ideas and make arguments on specific things, make persuasive arguments on specific ideas and specific items. And here we're going to learn how to start learning to do that. Okay, so it is definitely important for a job. Now, well, is public speaking different from a conversation? Of course it is, right? It is. And the reason why I am even mentioning this to you is because this is not a class where you can just wing something, right? You're going to have to spend some time learning to do this right. It will require preparation. It will require work. Okay. And of course, when you speak, it isn't about just a casual conversation. You are trying to inform your audience, or you're trying to persuade your audience. So it's a lot more formal. Okay. So it's definitely different from a conversation, which also means it's going to require more work on your part. Okay. So let's now start with the first chapter. And the name of the chapter is Speaking with Confidence. All right. So let's get started. Chapter 1. So in this chapter, we will talk about these 3 things: history of public speaking, different components of communication, and becoming a confident speaker. Okay, so let's get started with number 1, history of public speaking. All right, so let's start right around 4th century BC. The sculpture you see there, it is, Aristotle, and we very highly regard Aristotle, right? The kind of stuff that he taught us, we still follow today. So he was Greek. This is what we call a golden age of public speaking, and he formulated specific guidelines um, for speaking in public. Okay, and so we continue to follow that. We will discuss it in here, and we'll discuss it probably throughout our quarter here in terms of what he has taught and how we need to continue to follow that, because there's a lot of truth in it. Okay, so it started with Greek philosopher Aristotle, and I would say in this age itself, they came up with these 5 classical canons. Okay, um, and they came up with this based on what the Roman orators, people who used to do all of this public speaking, they had identified these 5 canons. Okay, so invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. Okay, so these are the 5 things that we need to learn about, right? So of course you have to come up with a great creative process of coming up with ideas, right? Once you have those ideas, you need to organize those ideas. And not only do you have to organize them, you have to use the right words to convey the right message. All right. So once you actually create that, you've written out your speech, which is 50% of your job done. Now you need to somehow learn to sort of remember some of the main points, right? You could use a little bit of notes, some of it is memory, and then you go ahead and you deliver that message. Of course, not only is the verbal as important, non-verbal is too. Okay, so ages ago, the Roman orators, they came up with these 5 classical canons: invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. Okay, now over time, now we're talking, fast forward to the 19th and 20th century. We call this the age of political oratory, oratory. And what it actually means is that, there were people who just loved some of the famous speeches, and then, they re-delivered those speeches. Okay, and that was what we called a declamation. Okay, and then the other word you want to know is elocution. So not only is your verbal important, but, the expression of emotions through body language, through non-verbals, right? Posture, movement, gestures, facial expression. All of this was also important. And of course, the way you used your voice, the way you projected your voice, all of that stuff was also as important. So 2 words to remember here. At this time of 19th and 20th century, you had declamation, which is with the delivery of an already famous speech, and elocution, which is the expression of emotions through body language as well as through voice. Okay, so this was 19th and 20th century, and of course, you remember "I Have a Dream." Everyone knows this particular speech, and if you haven't, please, go read the transcript. It's really inspiring. So, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered one of the greatest speeches in history, right? And it was titled "I Have a Dream," and it was really sort of motivational. And then you see a lot of, I'm going to go back to declamation, right? So we have a lot of people who have actually delivered the same speech, or, shared parts of it on a regular basis as a form of inspiration. Okay, so again, if you have not, please go and look at that speech. It is absolutely relevant and inspiring. Okay, let's move on to the 21st century. All right. Of course, I'm rushing through a little bit history. I know not everyone loves history, but this stuff, it helps you understand how, this particular discipline has developed. Okay, so 21st century, it's been easier, right, to get access to speeches. Why? Because you have the internet, right? So you're able to reach more audiences, and because it's electronic, it can be shared more easily, right? And you focus on your audience. You be audience centered is the word that I would use. Be audience centered. Know what your audience want and give them that. Okay, so of course, over the years things have changed, right? From declamation, now you don't really need that. You can actually just forward somebody's speech to someone else, and you can do it electronically. And you hear that person not in flesh, but in every possible context. It's coming to you, right? And that's kind of where the discipline has moved. More technological, more recordings, more videos, easier to share your message with people. Okay, so we've kind of started with 4th century with Aristotle. We've come all the way to the 21st century. Okay, so let's now talk about the second part of this chapter, and that is the components and the process of communication. Now, I feel like any kind of communication class is sort of incomplete without this conversation. So let's quickly go over it. We're going to talk about communication as action, as interaction, and as transactions. And there's a reason why I have those photos there. Hopefully, because you're really not seeing me in person here, that you're looking at these photos and you're trying to connect the dots somewhere and trying to remember some stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk about communication as action, as interaction, and as transaction. Let's start with the first one, which is the communication process, communication as action. Okay, so there are 3 things that you need to look at here: the source, the message, and the channel. All right, so the source, if I'm the one who's talking right now, I'm the public speaker, I'm the source. Okay, and what am I doing? I'm sharing my information with you. All right, so the information is really the message, right? That's the content of the speech. And how am I sharing this information? The channel here is a video, right? And when you can see me and then you can hear me, that means visual and auditory. So I'm getting both, right? The message is being transmitted to you from sender, who's me, to receiver, who's you, through this channel, which is the video channel and the internet. Okay, so 2 words to again remember here. As you look at the first section, which is source, encoding, and codes, right? Encoding is, whatever I'm saying is being encoded. It's translated into codes. And the codes could be verbal, could be nonverbal, right? And so, what you're getting from me are codes, right? And encoding is my ideas and my images that I have that I want to share with you are being encoded, right? And what is being encoded? It's the verbal and nonverbal. All right. And then when you're getting it, actually, another word that you could think of is decode, right? So you're decoding what I had encoded, right? That's kind of how it would work. So anyway, you want to think of communication as action, source, message, channel. 3 things, easy. Hopefully you get it. Okay, so communication as action, source, message, channel. Hopefully you understand all 3 of them. Okay. All right. And then we've got 2 more, right? So now you're the receiver. Now you've decoded the message, right? I use that word for you, decoded, which you're not seeing on the screen here. But you are the receiver. You're my audience member. You're my listener. You're my video watcher, whatever that is. Okay, that's another word that you want to remember here. That's noise, right? Now, what's noise? Anything that interferes with the message, right? So, if you're hearing some honking outside your house while this video is going on, well, that's noise, right? Or you're thinking, I'm hungry, I don't want to be here, right? Or let me just stop this video, do something. That's internal, right? So it says thoughts that are going on in your head. All right, so that's all noise. Anything that interferes with the communication of the message is noise. So what did we talk about? Source, message, channel, 3 here, 2 on the next slide, receiver, and noise. So we've talked about 5 things, and here's what we're going to do. we're going to put it into this particular model. This is still communication as action, right? The model here, as you see source on the left and you see receiver on the right. All right, and the circle in the middle is channel, right? So source is me, the receiver is you, the channel that you see in the middle is our video internet setup, right? Message that is going is what I'm telling you. You're encoding that. I'm encoding that message. You're decoding that message. We talked about that. And then, of course, there are some external factors like noise that come into play while you are listening to my message. Okay, so this, hopefully this is clear. This is kind of like the 101 communication model, that we talk about, in any first 101 communication class. Now, so everyone's clear on what this is, right? Source, receiver, channel in the middle, my message going to you, right, from source to receiver, and any noise that's any external or internal disturbance is what we call noise. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Remember, we were talking about three things. I'm going to go back here so you see it. All right, so we talked about action, interaction, and transaction. So I have finished talking about action. I'm going to move on to interaction, and then I will move on to transaction. Okay, so let's go back, and hopefully everyone's clear. Here we go. Communication as interaction. So what has happened here is when you're changing up from action to interaction, you're adding two more components to it, right? One is feedback and one is content. Okay, so let's talk about them. When I am talking to you, let's say I'm in person, right? And I'm talking to you and you're nodding your head like you understand what I'm saying, or you have a confused look on your face and I understand what's going on there, right? And that is feedback, right? So I'm getting some feedback based on my interaction, right? I have some feedback from you. And the context is really where the speech would take place, right? So if this was non-COVID world, it would be a classroom, or it could be an online class, and then it's an online setup, right? And all of that is context, environment, situation, is what we call context or environment. Okay, so now we've added these two components, and that's created the interaction. So let's look at our model again. It's very similar to what you saw before, except two things have been added. Now take a close look. You will see that there is a content box, right, surrounding our model, which basically means the speech is taking place in this environment or this context, right? So we've added that, which helps with interaction. And of course, the feedback, where you see, arrows going from the receiver to the source, right? So you see feedback and you see the arrows going toward the source. So we've added two more components to this. So we moved from action to interactions. Got it? Everyone's clear, hopefully. By the way, all of this probably is in your textbook as well. All right. So I want to talk about the third part here. That's the transaction, right? What you're seeing here is an arrow in the middle between the source and the receiver. But you're seeing arrows going both ways, right? So now the source could become the receiver could become the source, right? So it is a transaction. There are things going back and forth, right? So there is simultaneous process of encoding, decoding, right? So, let's say you were in any kind of conversation, right? Somebody's talking, someone's listening, and then that person's listening, and then you're talking. And there's this constant message going back and forth, right? That is what we're talking about, communication as transaction. Now, when you are a speaker, the reason why we're even talking about this is when you are a speaker, you want to tune in to what the audience is responding to. If they look bored, try and figure out a way to get them excited. If they're getting excited or angry, you need to find a way to please them, right? So this is a constant transaction model that we need to think about. Okay, so we've talked about three things: action, interaction, and transaction. All right, then. Let's move on to the third section in this chapter, and that is how to become a confident public speaker. Okay, so let's get started there. And let's talk about these three things, all right? So first of all, it is okay to be nervous. You will be nervous. And, people are looking at you, people are judging you, and that is okay. That is expected. Okay, so some of us, are get more nervous than others, right? You're predisposed to that, and that is okay. But you should know that. All right. Now, what that does is when you are nervous, you feel like there are just butterflies in your tummy, right? You feel like, oh my God, like, oh, I might have to run to the bathroom, like I'm feeling uncomfortable. And when you are in a larger group setup, with like maybe what, I don't know, 100 people, 200 eyes watching, you're gonna feel that. You definitely get those butterflies. And you will feel like you're nervous. But I think the trick is here. The secret here is to tell your brain that what I'm feeling here is not nervousness. It's excitement. I'm feeling the energy. So use that anxiety that you're feeling to tell your brain that what you're feeling is actually not nervousness, it's actually excitement. And that's going to help you with building up your confidence. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about that. Now, when you know something about the audience, right? So, for example, when I every semester when I teach a class, I want to know who's in my audience. Who are the students? Do I get to know a little bit about them? To make sure that I am on track. Like I'm not talking about things that they won't understand or don't care about or is not relevant to them. So I definitely want to know enough about my audience. And, I think as students of public speaking now, I think one thing you have to remember is if you wait till the last minute to come up with your speech topic or to write something, you're going to mess up. Okay, so procrastination is just a really bad idea. You want to start thinking about it in advance. Like this is definitely a class you can't wing, right? You need to spend some time, um, think about your speech topic, do the research in advance. Don't wait till the last minute. Okay. Also, I would say one way to feel more confident is to choose a topic that is relevant to your audience and something that you enjoy, right? I mean, if it's something really hard to do and it's just too scientific, too theoretical, I mean, it's going to be problematic, right? Because you would have to try and remember a lot of that stuff, and it's hard when you don't know enough about the topic, right? So I would say choose a topic that you would care about and you know a little bit about, and then spend the time to work on your outline. So there are some serious solid points allocated to outlines, and so you can't just write your outline in a essay format and get away with it. No, there's a structure. There is a structure. You have to work with that structure. You have to remember to use that structure. If you write it in an essay format, you are not going to get any points for that, and you will mess up your speech. I can promise you that. So we are looking to prepare and organize our structure. Once you have that, I promise you, it will build your confidence, right? You need to know your introduction and conclusion. We're going to talk more about that. And you've got to practice a lot and breathe, and that's what's going to help you with delivering your speech. Okay. So over time, as you practice, by the time you get to your maybe last speech, you're going to be awesome at it, right? You're going to learn to channelize that energy, right? You're going to learn to tell yourself, I got this, I'm good, I'm confident. And, I think one thing to remember is you're going to be delivering your speeches this time in front of family members, right? And so look for that positive support, and that's going to be great, right? Now, in a classroom, you would be doing that in front of friends. Again, look for happy, familiar, caring, emotionally supportive eyes, right? And when you see that, you start to feel more confident. Okay, so channelize that nervousness. Don't be scared. Focus on what you need to say and just go for it. Okay. So, again, all of this stuff, you want to spend some time thinking about how you need to train your brain, build your confidence, tell your brain that what you're feeling is excitement and not fear. And then give yourself a pep talk before every speech, and you'll do just fine. Okay. All right, then. Take a couple minutes if you want to stand up, maybe pause this video, walk around, have a glass of water, whatever, rest your hands, because I know a lot of you were writing. Okay, so let's move on then, whenever you're ready, to presenting your first speech, which is coming up soon, and that is chapter 2. So we'll talk about two things here: how to be audience-centered and the process of speech making. Okay, both very interesting stuff. Again, I have visuals there so you can sort of like remember, what we're talking about. So any DJ, right? He's playing for an audience. You see the audience getting all excited about certain songs, and he knows that those are the songs that are what he should be playing more, right? Or those kinds of songs are what he should be playing more. So what is he doing? He's being audience centered, and that's what you need to do for your speeches as well. Okay, so let's get started, and we'll get into it a little bit. So we'll talk about these three things, right? What does it mean to be audience centered? Oh, well, the first thing you want to remember is think about your audience. Choose topics that your audience may be interested in. Okay, so that is crucial. It's really important that you choose things that are relevant to your audience. Okay, number 2, once you have a good topic, then you want to start also thinking about gathering information about your audience. What do you think they care about? Why do you think they care about? Okay, so you want to ask yourself. Sometimes you could do a quick survey. Sometimes you ask a question in the classroom and you get some answers, right? You could do that on a discussion board. Or, regardless, when you are in a setup, well, it may not be, particular to this particular class just because of the COVID thing, and it's all a little bit different. But sometimes it's about anticipating and modifying your message based on the audience's reaction. Okay, so you may be in person and you're listening to seeing people and trying to figure out, like, are they paying attention to me? Okay, so it really does depend, context wise, context of COVID, context of non-COVID, context of classroom, context of business meeting, right? It really just depends. And then, of course, think about the audience's background. Okay, so, do they have different experiences? Do they speak different languages? What kind of tones do they prefer? What are they expecting out of the speech, right? All of those things make a difference as well. Okay, so when you consider your audience, when you understand what they care about and what they don't, that's what we mean by being audience centered. Okay, so I think this is a really cool sort of model, which I also like. This is called the audience centered model of public speaking. And so we've moved on now to the second part of this conversation, which is the speech making process, right? And it has 9 different steps. So we start all the way on the top with the little green um, coloring thing, that arrow that says select a narrow topic. Then you figure out what the purpose is, and then you develop the central idea, generate some main ideas, get evidence, which is the supporting, material, organize all your speech, and then rehearse it and deliver it. Okay, so let's go over all of them quickly. So let's talk about step 1. Okay, again, a lot of the visuals that you see in this PowerPoint really is meant to help you remember. Okay, so you've got to narrow down your topic and select your topic. So in the visual you see selecting a door, right? And there are 5, well, it might be 5 things that you may be interested in, then you've chosen one door, right? You've chosen one topic. And how do you make that decision? Well, you ask yourself, well, who's my audience? What do they care about? What are mine? What do I care about? Okay, is that important? Because you don't want to do something boring, right? You want to do something you're interested in as well. And then what's the occasion? This is supposed to be a video speech. It will work differently. Or this is supposed to be a speech that I'm delivering to my family members. That's gonna be different, right? So ask yourself all of these questions as you narrow down that topic for yourself. Okay, so the speech topic is obviously one of the most important aspects of creating speech content, right? So start there. Okay, so that's step 1. Let's move on to step 2. What is the overarching goal of this speech? Is it to inform people about something? Is it to persuade them to do something? Or is it to entertain, to make them laugh, whatever it is, right? So there are three types of general purposes. All right, so know what your general purpose is. For example, your first big speech is your informative speech, right? So the general purpose of the speech is to inform. The last speech of this class was a persuasive speech, which means you have to convince people to think a particular way or to do something or to act, right? And so what is the general purpose for that speech? It is to persuade, okay? Entertain is, something we will not cover in this class, but, it could be a speech to, that you deliver at a wedding or something like that. That's to entertain. Okay, so so the step 2 is to figure out what your general purpose is. Number 3, now let's look at the specific purpose, okay? So this should be a concise statement of the desired response from the audience, okay? Again, it could be informative, it could be persuasive. Now, but if your general purpose is to inform, then obviously your specific purpose is to inform as well, but you're digging deeper and narrower and coming up with something more specific. Okay. Now, how do you come up with this? You ask yourself, well, what do you want your listeners to remember, to feel, to do when you're done speaking? Okay. So if your general purpose is to persuade, then let's say your speech topic is to persuade people to recycle, okay? Then what is your specific purpose? Like you're going to get in deeper, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about here. You got to get, narrower and deeper into your topic to persuade, right? Persuade people to recycle. And that is your specific purpose. Okay. Number 4, develop your central idea. All right. So this is a one sentence summary. It has to be one sentence. And the way you want to, and we're going to work a lot, on this so I'm just giving you an overall sort of idea here, but it helps you understand, like, what is the overall idea of my speech? If I had to write it in one sentence, what would that look like? Okay, so does it have, logical divisions? These are 3 ways, you can recycle or reduce waste, right? So you're breaking it down. So now you're coming up with that central idea. And of course, you have to have strong reasons to support that idea. So that's step 4. Step 5 is to now generate the main idea. So now you've come up with the 3 ideas, right? And then now you're going to start, generating, them to be solid main ideas, right? So come up with 3 main ideas. That is kind of what we, sort of prefer in any kind of speech. Like an informative speech would have 3 main ideas. So these are the key points of your speech, right? And once you have those ideas, now you start to develop them. All right. And how do you develop them? You start bringing in evidence. Okay. So just like the bridge, you need those pillars to support it. It's the same thing. You have these 3 ideas. Now find a way to support those ideas. Okay. And how are you going to do them? You can use facts, examples, definitions, quotations, and whatever these are, ideas may be. Your supporting evidence should, clarify or, amplify or illustrate those main ideas. Okay. And of course, you want to find ideas that are strong in terms of logic, but also strong in terms of like telling a good story or appealing to senses. And how are you going to find that? Well, you need to do research, and you need to do some solid research. Wikipedia usually never cuts it. Okay. You need to do more than that for it to be a really strong idea. Okay, so you need to gather supporting materials that are valid, that are logical, and that are strong, like the pillars you see holding that bridge. Once you have all this information, it's now time to organize your speech. Okay, and you know, I will be providing you with what kind of structures I'm expecting for each of your speeches. Okay, so we do definitely need a structure. We need a logical structure, and that logical structure helps people remember what you have to say, and it kind of has built-in transitions and built-in repetitions. And when you do that, you start definitely feel a lot more in control. Okay, and when you have some sort of order to your ideas, that kind of makes it easier for the listeners to understand what you're saying. So that's step 7, to organize your speech. A word that you want to remember here is disposition. Disposition is the term we use to describe the organization and arrangement of ideas and illustrations. Okay, so um, again, a word to remember. But number 7 there is to organize your speech in a logical structure. Okay, let's move on to the next one, and that is to rehearse. Now, you have it in an outline format. You will definitely feel a lot more in control, but now it's time to rehearse your speech. Okay. And how do you rehearse it? Well, you have to practice it several times, sometimes in front of the mirror, or maybe many times in front of the mirror. But you want to practice like you're actually on stage and you're delivering, or you are in a classroom and you're delivering, right? And you want to rehearse it aloud. Definitely practice the eye contact, looking at different people, not just at one person. And then, what does my body language look like when I'm actually saying something, right? So you have to think about all of those things. And honestly, the way to rehearse it is, write a few notes down and make sure that you're covering all the main points. And remember some of the supporting evidence, but you can write a few pointers down in little phrases. And so you can look down at your notes whenever you want, but you don't really have to memorize the whole speech. Rehearse it just enough so that you can discuss, the main ideas and the evidence, without kind of leaving out some of the important aspects. Okay, so that's number 8. And then, of course, the last one is to deliver your speech, right? And I want to take a quick look, make sure there are no last minute adjustments that you need to make. Just walk calmly in front of the room, focus on your message, focus on your audience, definitely have the eye contact you need, and deliver your speech. Okay, so those were the 9 steps, um, audience-centered model of communication. And one thing to remember, of course, we're going to get a lot deeper in this, but one thing to remember is every speech always has at least 3 main logical divisions, right? So you have the introduction and the body and the conclusion, something you've done enough essays to know that, right? And the idea of the introduction is to be the hook, right? Get people excited about what your topic is by sharing just a little bit about the topic. Give us a little overview of your topic, and then make it compelling enough for the audience to continue to listen to you. And your body's obviously going to have the main ideas, the 3 main ideas, supporting evidence, all of that. And then the conclusion will kind of wrap up the speech and connect the intro to the conclusion. You're summarizing all the main ideas that you've just presented in your body. Okay, so I have a little X and a check mark there, and it's important because I have to mention it every single time, right? We still mess up, and I'm hoping you don't. um, do not write your speech as an essay. It needs to be in an outline format. And I would say focus. Once you have your speech topic and your central idea, focus on the 3 main body points, and then go back and complete your introduction and conclusion. So that would be my recommendation. All right. So I want to end by giving you this particular example, right? How to avoid getting the flu. Your general purpose is to inform, right? If that's your topic, how to avoid getting the flu, you want to talk about that. Your general purpose is to inform. Your specific purpose is now digging in a little deeper, right? To inform my audience about the 2 best methods to avoid catching the flu. All right. So I have given you a little bit more information, not just to inform, but what am I going to inform my audience about, right? And that's my specific purpose. So my central idea is this one sentence that gives an overall idea about what the speech is going to look like, right? So reducing your risk of catching the flu is simple and easy for everyone to do. It's like the overarching idea. This is what we're going to talk about, right? And the main points, getting vaccinated, washing your hands, all right? Two main methods. And then my summary basically connects my introduction with a conclusion as well as my main point. So getting the flu is most effective, but washing your hands is second best preventive measure. Okay, so what have I done here? We just talked about all this stuff, right? General purpose, specific purpose, central idea, main points, and summary or conclusion, right? And see how I'm breaking it down. And of course, the speeches are going to be a lot more complicated than that, but just we talked about what a general purpose is. We talked about what a specific purpose is. We talked about what a central idea is. We talked about what your main points need to look like, right? And so I just wanted to give you an example, just kind of breaking it down like that for you. Okay, so that's that for chapters 1 and 2. And it's actually quite simple, a lot of this stuff, and you have to learn to sort of implement it in your speeches. And I think in by the end of this class you will. But this is chapters 1 and 2. My suggestion would be go read the chapter in your book after you've listened to this video, and that way now you remember everything, and that repetition in your head is going to help you with the quiz as well as the speech. All right, so that's that.